in large scale transformation programs, very often you have a PMO. Remember, you mentioned PMO, so this triggered me. So you have a project management office. So now my question is going to be to you, do you think that a PMO replaces a change manager in your project, or do you think a change manager should be part of a PMO, or is that another rabbit hole that we're not going to go into today?
I would say the PMO is the total contrary. It is the antibody to change management.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the BPM 360 podcast. My name's Caspar, your host, and with me is, as always, my good friend and co-host, Russell. Russell, where you at, man? Although I can see curtains, I know where you are.
Yeah, you got me there. I'm at home.
You got to get a green screen, buddy.
Oh, yeah, I could always try that background, but Riverside, it's not so clever. It starts cutting off my ears and head and everything.
Yeah, well, your ears are hidden anyway.
Then
you got a headset on.
It still looks awkward if you start cutting everything off.
True.
The blurry background is well, I don't know. It just looks.
That's fine. How are you, buddy?
Great. I'm fine. I'm really looking forward to our continuous discussion around roles.
Yes.
It seems to be the ultimate set of rabbit holes. I once watched this. I thought it a bit devastating, but it was quite a cool nature science program.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did is that I think they took some ants in Africa, and I think they just poured concrete into the whole nest, yeah, and then afterwards they dug it out, yeah.
I think I've seen that.
Of course, so on the one hand, how can you kill a whole colony of ants just for the sake of finding out how big their burrow is? I mean, that's something I thought about. I said that's more than cruel. That's just like, oh yeah, let's do some science. Let's just kind of eradicate a complete nation. I mean, come on. I mean, it's like when you watch films, seriously, and you see like these nature things, then you see this little rabbit, and she's trying to get away. She's nearly managing, and there's somebody there with a camera, instead of just kicking the fox away, yeah, and just making sure he saves this one rabbit. He says, it's for the sake of science. So he's kind of like there with a camera, just saying, yeah, he's not going to manage it, and then it's taking a take. Oh, but the point is that this gigantic, not a word, I know.
Gigantic is a word.
Ginormous isn't, exactly. It's enormous and gigantic. Okay.
Yeah.
So this ginormous, like nest of and all these different channels and air vents and all this, it's just fantastic. And from the outside, you didn't see anything. So us discussing roles in BPM, you would think it feels the same. If you look at the surface, it says, you get at the PowerPoint slide, 2 roles, 3 roles at max, and they have a definition there, and everything's been said. And exactly that what we had at the customer, you're going through, wow, is it so simple? And on the other hand, it's not as arbitrary that you could say, everybody, you just say who you've got, and then you make it work with them. But it really is helpful to go through the roles and see what their function is in a given phase. And I think that's what we're going through. So we're taking on the whole implementation of BPM from the view of the people involved and what they have to be able to do to make it stick. And that gives a complete different analysis or a different view on the topic of BPM. So I think nobody can expect to say, I just listened to this podcast, or get AI to listen to it, because then nobody does listen. Yeah. And then I have a quick description of the roles that I need. And I just take this and go to the next project. And then I can say, you want to implement BPM? It's all there. Yeah. That's exactly the point. It's not that simple. So let's kick it off.
It's not, and I'll kick it off. And I usually see this. I mean, I like the rabbit hole analogy. I usually see this as the moment in the Matrix movie where Morpheus offers the red and the blue pill to Neo, played by Keanu Reeves, and then say, well, red is, let's see how deep the rabbit hole goes, and so we shall. today.
So
And
just a question.
yeah,
So who wouldn't know that is played by Keanu Reeves?
everybody knows that.
Yeah. So why do you mention it? Is this for young people that haven't watched the
Yeah.
film?
Yeah,
I think
because the
so.
film, do you know when the film came out? That was like early 2000. I mean, that's like
Exactly.
25 years ago.
So I watched it with my son, and there's my wife, of course, also watched it because, of course, she.
Of course,
So,
Keanu Reeves, again.
yeah, again. And I just said, yeah. And I said, I would forgive you, darling, because,
Yeah, of course.
if
You know when
not,
you're beat.
exactly. So, but I suppose, no, that I was thinking about it, Caspar. I thought, yeah, that's very considerate of you, because we cannot assume the people that are like, we would
Yeah.
always assume people at our age, of course, know who that is in Matrix. But maybe for the younger generation, if you
Yeah.
haven't seen the film,
Yeah.
gotta watch it.
Number 1 is really good. Number 3 is really good. Number 2, well, let's not discuss that one.
No. We always talk about
But
it.
yeah, I mean, for me, it feels like yesterday that I saw that movie for the first time. But a lot of people never saw that. So, but let's dive into the rabbit hole. And we are actually, since this is the third installment of our mini series,
Yeah.
we have a new role today. And this one's special. This one is, I would say, a role that is not always in the standard slide decks, as you mentioned.
Yes.
Because today we're talking about, drum roll, the change management lead. Change management. So we're talking about somebody who's dealing with people and their behavior, which is typically far away from process modeling and process management. But let's dive in. Let's dive into the change management lead. So we're talking about implementing a BPM program. I won't say BPM tool because that's just a small part of a BPM implementation anyway. So change management lead, and I'm just gonna read, like we did in the other ones. I'm gonna read what AI says about this role, right? I mean, it's always a good springboard to do that.
Okay.
So a change management lead, BPM fundamentally reshapes how people work. I like how that starts. This role designs and executes the people side of the transformation, from stakeholder engagement to training and adoption strategies. We have so much to unpack here. So character traits, right? Here we go. Empathy and persuasive communication. They must genuinely understand human resistance and translate it into actionable interventions rather than generic communication plans. Again, so much to unpack. Let me finish it up and then we're going to have a good conversation about it. If we talk about the required experience for a change management lead, proven experience leading change on large-scale transformations programs, ideally using structured methodologies, Proschke, Adkar, Cotter, psychology or organizational behavior backgrounds are a strong advantage. So we're in deep non-technical territory now. What's your first gut intuition response?
So I think people listening to this podcast, and maybe just listening in and not coming from the BPM sphere, but maybe from a big IT implementation sphere, but being business transformation, I say, yeah, okay, but of course, okay. So you say BPM has a big impact on the way people work, okay? So you need change management. That's let's say obvious, because that's what the books say about, if you want to change people,
Yes.
then you need a change manager. Okay. But if, first of all, looking at change, and they said that's why the role doesn't appear a lot of the time. So the magnitude of change, I think it's very, even for, and then you have a change manager who has all these skills. He's been doing change management all his life. And I just think about this person then joins the BPM term at the team.
Okay. Yeah.
And let's just go, and he will look at this. He says, so what's the big deal? Yeah. So what is this about? Because he said, last year I spent 2 years implementing SAP. The whole business model changed, and the way they work has changed, and they had to use a different system. And the things they didn't have, they had less control. And so there's a lot of things where they're saying, where in the implementation of an IT system, you said BPM tools is a smaller part of implementing BPM.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the change managers, they finish up, with all due respect, having to do organize the trainings for the tool.
Okay.
And with the
Yeah.
tool comes then the bit of the process or the different way of working. And it's more saying, yeah, I know the system sucks. The old system was much better. You know it.
Of
But
course.
don't
Yeah.
worry. You'll get used to it. Yes, you used to use a keyboard. Now you do a mouse. And so this kind of like technological adaptation, system adoption, now something I think is underappreciating the necessity for change in real terms. But it's a lot of the time it's what they're used to, and that is because it makes it tangible. There is a change; it's a system change. But the
Mm-hmm.
neglect the real changes on the way they are working around the process. So if you come from technology change transformation down to the process change, now that's already something where I think change management is much more a change manager. Yeah, but technology, I always think about, get the trainings done. And that's what
Yeah.
it's reduced to a lot of the time by the IT
Yeah.
departments or the project manager, and the budgets are cut down. As soon as we're talking about the process change, a change manager really becomes, I think, highly relevant. But again, he can, with all the skills that you mentioned, he has to, and empathy he needs to be, yes, of course.
Yeah.
I always think that the change manager has to know what we're talking about, of which magnitude. He has to get a sense and feeling
Mm-hmm.
for what are these changes about, and how can I build up a communication and an argumentation, a value argumentation that
Mm-hmm.
will actually make people understand their purpose in the new process and which role they play, and by that, why the change is a necessity. And of course, taking all the standards, take them through that trough of
The
whatever
trough of
anger.
dissolution. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I get
so
that.
formally, yes, that's what you do. But I always think you need to be able to bring in the inter.
But
Now I'm okay. You
yeah.
just
No.
go on that, and then
Yeah.
I want to take another step then in direction of BPM on this.
Okay. Okay. I just want to unpack one thing here, because whatever you're saying makes sense. If you look at change management in BPM projects, I think there's at least 3 different levels at what the change management takes place. You already mentioned one for sure. Well, you actually mentioned 2. So you mentioned change management around getting used to a new tool. That's, I would say, is the easiest of change management types. We'll call that level 1, Ebene 1, as the Germans would say that. Hey, there you go. I learned a new word not too long ago, so I'm now flashing that word around all the time. Then level 2, I would say you see change management as it refers to the actual job content. So the process that you mentioned that as well. So what is your new role in the process, and what does that mean for you? And then I think there's a third level, which I think is the hardest one, and that is, how does the BPM project influence the organization as a whole? Because it's not just we need to do process management. That in itself brings with it maybe a new way of doing governance, a new way of doing reporting. But there's also a rather large group of stakeholders when it comes to BPM that you need to manage. And that is, I think, let's say, the organization-wide change management. So you got tool level change management, you got process level change management, and then you have organization level change management. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and then the challenging thing around BPM and the change manager around BPM is that you're talking about an organization, a process that is an abstract construct beyond, above, next to, under, whatever.
Yeah.
the actual operating processes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
you have now you're bringing in a governance, you're bringing in a management style or a management discipline, which is a lot of the times just placed there singularly, BPM, but it only really works as a very integrative, in an integrative manner. So it has, you have to take, ultimately, you have to take the governance around documents. We're talking SOPs. You have to take the governance around audits and their incidents and their findings that have to be then woven into the. You have to take the initiatives around Lean Six Sigma, process excellence initiatives. You have to take them all into consideration, and you have to then. Ultimately, you also have to weave this in to the existing IT change request procedures.
So there we go.
So you look at the simple construct of BPM, again, PowerPoint, that's the second. You have the first PowerPoint with the roles, second PowerPoint where you have the process lifecycle, et voila, you're done. That's it, BPM. There are 2 slides, get it done. Oh, a third slide for the tool. So we have 3 slides, and that's the implementation, and we're done. Now, and that's why I think, oh my God, you couldn't put it on slides. What actually then happens if you really think about what BPM means if you do it properly? So because then you're thinking about how can you still have a decoupled change request management for a program management office, not thinking about getting involved and understanding who the process owners are and how they get involved when you're discussing your programs and deciding them and thinking about how this will go down and all the other aspects that an owner and an expert should be involved in from a management perspective. So to a certain extent, it's a bit like people are too much used to having like hierarchical and operative, like also management systems.
And then I have a question for you, Russell. Because you mentioned something that triggered me. In large scale transformation programs, very often you have a PMO. You remember you mentioned PMO, so this triggered me. So you have a project management office. So now my question is going to be to you: do you think that a PMO replaces a change manager in your project, or do you think a change manager should be part of a PMO, or is that another rabbit hole that we're not going to go into today?
That is, I would say the PMO is the total contrary. It is the antibody to change management.
So that's the machines.
I know that I'm going to get shot down here, but
yes, but that's fine. A bit of controversy never killed anybody.
No, seriously, a PMO typically is somebody who just has been given a mandate, and they define a structure that is purely focused on the objective of the initiative, with a beginning and an end, in time, in budget. I would say a PMO is typically the least empathetic person.
I have a
good
analogy.
reason. For good reason.
They don't
want to hear the sob story of the consultant, why he broke the budget and why he didn't manage to tell him before, why he didn't manage to plan his budget properly, why he did underestimate the master data is much more complicated than he thought. He shouldn't care. He should be a badass that really just forces the structures on. But you need a counterpart to the PMO. But I do not believe that the PMO should be holding hands. Let's say the business units and the owners, because they're the people that are being impacted. They're the people that are being told the implementation will take a year and then it takes 3 years. So we need the badass PMO, and we need the empathetic change manager.
I just thought of the analogy when you started talking about that. I think a PMO can be compared with an ice hockey team. They work together. It's like tick, 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 and they try to score a goal. In other words, they try to execute a plan. And I think a change manager is much more like an ice skating figure. Figure skating. What do they call it? Figure ice skating. It's like somebody who really elegantly glides over the ice and tries to bring people with them into a certain, let's say, a certain form of ecstasy. So this is where we're going. Follow me. So that, for me, that's much more what change management embodies. Is where it's more of an art. PMO is a science.
I have no idea of ice hockey. But I believe that you will have these different kind of people in an ice hockey team,
Yeah, of course,
like with soccer as well. You have like the master, but I think I think you said the scientific or like the structured things need to work, and you should be empathetic with your consultants that are being
Yeah,
paid well to
yeah,
stick to plans, who claim they're professional. So that's keeping the act together. But let's go back to this change
yeah.
manager in the
Yes,
context of BPM. So I
good
think,
plan.
as I originally said, the change manager in general needs to have these skills and traits and everything you described there, 100%. But to be able to build up the narrative and the communication, he also has to have a good understanding. Empathy alone will not be enough just to hold
Mm-hmm.
hand and say it's going to be better, it's going to be better, and then it's all out of a sudden better. I think a change management around BPM always has to have a bit of a PR person around
Mm-hmm.
the topic, and that doesn't mean they have to have all the in-depth process management knowledge as the architect does, or that. But in an interview with with the stakeholders, and interviews with the, let's say, the center of excellence, the change
Mm-hmm.
manager has to be able to understand the organization with its fears and doubts and challenges, and be able to extract actually the quintessence of BPM in a positive manner to build up the narrative on why they're doing this, and
Mm-hmm.
help the program also with the PMO, if he's involved there in a big initiative, but help them actually find a balance or a communicative way
Mm-hmm.
of addressing some key points. And I think here it is not, of course, without a mandate sponsorship, let's forget it. Let's shut this BPM
Yeah,
down.
of
So
course,
the
of
change
course.
manager is not going to replace strong sponsorship.
Nope.
And a change management person will not, he may help a bit, but he won't be the person to convince the sponsors that this is a necessity. And that's something where I
I
think
agree with that.
you need to have this head of BPM, the person coming in who really can on C-level argue for this, And he has been challenged left, right, and center by the establishment. Yeah, so
But
let's talk about BPM. When you implement
yeah.
BPM, you're going against the whole. It's like, I'm not saying it's like a revolution, but you expect everybody to contribute. You expect
Mm-hmm.
everybody to give something up for the greater good. And you yourself, you're not claiming so much for yourself because you just want to be a center of excellence, but you want to establish high profile roles with a strong mandate that will coordinate all these different establishments for the greater good of the company, of the strategy.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
and and that narrative and the change, the different like levels and areas of people that are impacted reaches far, because you need to be able to support the engagement and enablement of process owners in a virtual, let's say, world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
You have to understand and support around the process experts, but you definitely also have to communicate and help the quality managers and the IT departments and everything else to understand how and where they are playing an important part in getting BPM to be successful.
but I mean, let me challenge that a little bit. I mean, I don't disagree with you, uh, but I think that the change management, the change manager, let's call him that, is probably the role in the whole mini series that we're doing that requires the least amount of actual BPM experience. They need to know what they're talking about a little bit, of course, but principally, I would say the main advantage and the main experience that the change manager needs to bring is a tool set of how do we move an organization from point A to point B from a behavioral perspective. And that could be an individual behavior, that could be a departmental or an organizational behavioral level. So I totally agree that they need to understand BPM, but I think that the change manager for me is very much like a right hand man or woman of the BPM. The what do we call that in number one? In the second one, the BPM program manager or the
Yeah,
COE lead.
I totally agree. And this is where last time we were talking about process architects and the BPM lead, and we look at everything they have to manage, and a lot of the time it's I think it's too much. It's the unicorn that you're looking
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
So I think, and I mean, sometimes you just have awesome individuals with experience that cover a lot of these roles we're talking about, or at least on a very high level can contribute here for guidance and getting things moving forward. But I would think that um, the topic around change management is that everybody believes they can do it. Everybody believes I just need to talk to somebody
Yeah,
and give him some training.
yeah.
Yeah, let's have a town hall meeting and kick it off, and isn't that change management? So, and
Let me give you an
I'm
example.
definitely the one that falls. I know that that is not it. Yeah. So
So
I can't tell you what it is. So
I can give you an example that might describe what we're talking about.
okay.
So in my most of the people, well, not everybody knows that, but a lot of people know that I worked in the chemical manufacturing industry for close to 20 years. At a certain point in time, that time is up and you need to move on voluntarily or involuntarily. And the last year that I spent at that company, they asked me, could you please support a um, change management program that we're running, because they were doing a massive restructuring, and the people that actually stayed needed to be, let's say, taken through the morning curve, the Kubler-Ross curve, and then they needed people who can guide those people there. So we had a project team that consisted out of a couple of women, a couple of men, and there were two roles that I would like to highlight and to give you a bit of the difference between the two. So there, on the one hand, there's this guy, and I would say he embodied the PMO part. But for a PMO part, he really had quite a high level of empathy, which was really great. But he was detailed, he was thorough, he thought about everything. Um, and then the guy leading the whole program had a psychology background, and he knew every freaking trick in the book on how to make sure that people go from A to B, even sometimes without knowing that they were going from A to B. And that year, for me, that is a change manager. The other guy, that was the PMO part. And together, I was just running around like a headless chicken in between and I was just good in facilitating workshops at that point in time.
Mm.
But that change manager, I still have the slide deck that we created there with all of the little things that we would take people through in terms of exercises, in terms of, did you know this? Do you know that this is happening? Do you know that? That is what change management really is about. He knew what the assignment was. We need to bring people from this state of mind into that state of mind. And then we needed the PMO guy to say, these are the steps that we need to do. And you need the change management guy to say, or woman,
Execute it. Yeah,
this
you
is
need
how we're going to
somebody.
do it.
You need somebody to execute it. But so okay, that's good. I remember, you many years ago, you held a keynote on that
Oh,
initiative
yeah,
you did
true. Yeah,
down in
I did.
Frankfurt.
Yes, I
That was
remember
really
that.
cool. And you had everybody coming in had to press the button on
Yeah,
how happy they were. This
yeah.
sentiment.
The
So
sentiment. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
you had a lot of budget and you had some time as well. Now
Yes.
let's if you're thinking about this back to reality, And I'm thinking about, let's say, this event I went to, BPM and O.
Okay.
Principally, everybody, when they were talking about their initiative, they were actually talking about how they were tackling change.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there was some, some co-creation and I think also very much focused on that. So I think it's a real thing. And I do admit that it's still not like a tangible asset. So, so you said,
Mm-hmm.
oh, if you have these people with the micro skills and the education, is it something that you say, okay, you got that slide deck and it's reproducible? Are they like from the
Mm-hmm.
20 tricks, 10 of them are something that anybody can apply? And if you put that together in the context of BPM, you have now a change management guide for BPM. Or is it
Let me.
something, or is it
Mhm.
something still there's like this magical touch about change management? Is it something we can all learn? We just have to do a masterclass or do some seminar?
Oh,
Or
that
is
might
it
be a new business model there.
yeah, or some certification, or is it something that is I don't know, related to a different type of person? That's why you need to you cannot be on the one hand the PMO and the change
No,
manager.
no, no,
You
no. Let
cannot
me.
have these people together. So what's
It's
your
it's a
take
great
on that?
it's a good question. Yeah. So let's break a BPM implementation down into a couple of different parts. Um, First and foremost, what a lot of people think about is the technical part of a BPM project. So the tool and the modeling, which I think is the easiest part in terms of change management. That is literally just training. You train people. I think where the biggest bottleneck for most BPM projects come from is simply a lack of adoption. It doesn't grow further than just the modelers. They're not capable of moving enough people in the organization to actually understand and start using the principles behind a BPM project.
Hmm.
And I think that when you talk about that last part, I always look at it like this. So everybody knows the normal distribution chart, right?
Hmm.
You know it too, the bell curve. Every project that you do ultimately has a couple of people that will follow that project no matter what. Those are the people that's the people that camp outside the Apple store when a new iPhone comes out, right? You don't need to convince them. They're already there. At the opposite side of the spectrum are basically people that say, over my dead body, I will leave this organization before I have to change. And they very often end up leaving the organization, either voluntarily or involuntarily. And then there is this big bulge in the middle. And the question that you really need to figure out is, and that's what to me change management is all about. How do I gather enough critical mass that moves in the direction of where I want it to move, so that the rest of the people feels it has no choice anymore and will move with that critical mass.
Okay.
That I think is change management. And you don't need to move. So if you take the normal curve and you have the everything outside of 2 standard deviations, that's what I just mentioned
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
then there is still about 95% of the people in the middle. So that means that if I can move like 20% of the people that start moving in a certain direction, then in terms of a normal distribution, your average will start to move to the right. And then the people on the left feel that they are slowly getting out of touch with where the organization is going.
Hmm.
And this is why I think BPM is also such a complex project, because it moves the entire organization. And that requires an enormous amount of leverage that you need to pull. And that's why I think change management is so. Yeah, you can train people to do that. The real trick, I would say, is if imagine that you have a toolbox with 20. Let's call them tricks. They're of course typically normally scientifically proven, but let's call them tricks for a second. You have a toolbox with 20 tricks. The real clue, Russell, is when am I using what trick? Because they can backfire as easily as they can be successful.
Hmm. Yeah,
And that's what I
yeah.
think makes it much more an art. And that's the reason why you need a change manager who has, I think his predominant experience needs to be on change management rather than on on BPM. BPM is something they can understand, but they need to then translate that into how do we make sure that the organization moves in the right direction.
So how many projects have you had where you had a real project, a change manager dedicated to BPM?
So in my DSM years, we actually had one in the BPM project itself. We had one later on after the restructuring. And then when I moved into the vendor industry, so in my Aris days and also now in my Salonis days, I infrequently come across customers that actually have this role. But I say infrequently. I mean, I always advise it to have it, but you very often see that it's treated as a sort of a add-on role for the project manager. And then we go back to the conversation: can PMO do change management or not? Because a project
Yeah.
manager is typically PMO type of person.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I need to reflect that a bit on which phase. As you said, the big bulk. You need to if it's about this bulb in the middle, making sure they don't, let's say, you don't lose too many on the left. You know, you don't get a movement of people that don't want to go, dragging a part of the bulb out of the movement. Gaining momentum. It's also it's about speed as well. You can't say, oh yeah, 5 years we got everybody there. It's just, you know, you want to
You're
create a
right.
certain momentum, because then it sticks together and you have a bit of a mass like effect. I think that is a real art if you manage to get that. A lot of the time, I think it's advertising. Yeah, advertising tries to influence people, and
Yeah.
ultimately it always comes down to, you see this with software, say some PPM tool providers have a lot of money for marketing, others don't. And
Yeah, true.
so
So
you're talking
true.
about, communication is also about, with how much power, how many iPads can you give out for the quiz on BPM, the new role? How many parties can you have to throw where you invite the people and have a BPM award? And no, only just joking. But so if you got money to splash around, yeah, then you can move a lot. Yeah, you can just bribe everybody. No, but you're not
Yeah.
bribing. But what I'm saying is, mass moving masses. I'll be talking about masses, but moving masses is about. It's sometimes about mass communication. It's about
Yeah.
staying on it. It's
True.
about, and ultimately, it's about budget. Um, and what I also think interesting here is that it's not right at the beginning that you want to and can communicate, because you don't have the fundaments there to
Yeah.
move the people with.
Yeah.
So I
True.
think let, let's take out the topic if this more about people maybe calling us and saying, what the hell, what do you think, how much budget we got for BPM? And just about got enough people to pay the guys to configure the tool. The rest I had to do myself. Which
Yeah.
cuckoo land do
Oh
you
yeah.
live in? I've said, yeah.
Yeah.
To be honest, being that, so I'm with you. I feel with you. I feel
Yeah.
with you. But what I think is interesting, maybe just for the sense of the academia talking about this, is
Okay.
next to these, so all the traits and the whole, and we talk about that. So it's really good. Is the timing to have a the sweet spot on, you were saying, the right tools at the right time, yeah, and in combination with that is, when do you really kick off, let's say, an intense phase of change?
Mm-hmm.
And that is something where I think it's interesting, because you're coming out to the stakeholder, you look at your initiative with its different, let's say, foundations, BPM foundations, just need to settle, get
Mm-hmm.
signed off at top level, get the mandate. And then they said, yeah, well, let's have a kickoff. Let's have the town hall. Let's have this. And you need to have a communication plan, a change plan in front of you that you can execute And you really have to, and sometimes it's like the timing is everything. You should start going out too late. The whole effect, the momentum can be lost. If you go out too
Yeah.
early, there's too many
Yeah.
questions unanswered.
Yeah.
So one thing about
I
change, and
agree.
this is so much not the role, but that's where maybe a change manager has the experience and the empathy and the feeling for the right moment, and they can actually then say, hey, let's not try and get everything ready. We need to communicate now. People are
Yeah.
getting nervous. So he has that feeling
Yeah.
for,
Yeah.
and there will be a lot of signs, and you have to be empathetic on what's happening. Sometimes going out too early is not good. Sometimes, but going out too late is also like, yeah, you ignore me. You don't want me to be part of this. I have the impression you already decided everything and done everything. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's something I think around the role is really fascinating. Ultimately, again, I agree with you that this should be something, or this is super important. Um, I just see that a lot of initiatives don't really have a dedicated resource doing this,
Yeah.
and where a lot of people have a, a real broad foundation of deep knowledge, PMO structure,
Yeah. Yeah.
communication
Yeah.
skills to convince stakeholders. Unfortunately, the real change management, let's say psychology and the tricks, is something that I think a lot of people in the projects are
Yeah.
missing, and they know it. That nobody says I can. When it comes down to it, there is like this bit of a black hole. They go back to the standards. Yeah, consultants will say, yeah, well, let's do a communication, let's do a newsletter, let's do a training, and then as you said, da sind sie mit ihrem Latein am Ende. They, as the
Yeah.
Germans say, they
Yeah.
come to
Then
the
they
end of their
out of
Latin.
depth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Out of depth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely true.
Um,
And so I think, and we need to start wrapping this up, unfortunately, because time's running out on us again, as usual. We can talk on this for hours, Russell. Certainly this one.
but before you wrap up, quick
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Sure. Go ahead.
We need to get somebody on the show. So a bit of a shout out to our listeners here. If they know somebody who knows somebody, a hearsay.
I know somebody.
Yeah, who says who can openly on the podcast say, I am a change manager. I know all the tricks. I will.
I got just a guy, Russell.
I can hypnotize masses to jump off a cliff. I
I'm
know. I got the lemmings. I got the lemmings to change their attitude towards their life, and I made them all jump off the cliff.
I'm I got just a guy. I already discussed him.
Yeah.
He was that guy from that change management project. He was the guy. I'm going to see if he's available and if he's willing to jump on. He's a Frenchman, so we'll not blame him for that. But he's an absolutely great guy. And
I
and
promise.
he does guest lectures at the lectures at the university about this topic as well. I mean, I'm gonna find him. I haven't spoken with him in years, but it would be really good to do that.
Yeah, get him on the show because
I will. I will try to do that.
I think no, seriously, I'll tell you why. Because I think a lot of listeners are going to say, yeah, it makes sense. But I think it's like, when you hear pictures about, I don't know, a really rare animal. Yeah. And you read books about it. But isn't it awesome if you can go to a zoo and see this
yes.
real life
Yeah.
thing? It says so
yeah.
and I think
Yeah.
a lot of our audience is saying, yeah, it all makes sense, but have you ever seen one? Let's get one on and hear a bit about.
Have you seen one in the wild?
Have you seen one in the wild lately?
All right, so we're gonna do a Madagascar episode. I just love movie references. All right, cool. We'll leave it at that for now, Russell. Change management is all about FOMO, the fear of missing out. You need to make sure that other people feel FOMO and they will follow. That we could have done this in like 2 seconds as well, after all. But anyway, this was much more fun. For those of you still listening with us after about 45 minutes of me and Russell ranting about change management, thank you very much for sticking with us. We like to see you back next time again when we go into part 4 of our roles. And the one that we're then talking about, Russell, the last one for the implementation phase is the process mining and analyst specialist.
Ooh.
So that's going to be interesting. We can talk on hours about that as well. Until then, Russell, thank you very much. And to our listeners, I say enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.